I am an African.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the special set of episodes on South Africa on the A4D podcast. On the 29th of May, South Africa, with a population of 59 million, Africa's most industrialized economy, and among its top five democracies, will be heading to the polls in its seventh general election in 30 years of democracy since the end of apartheid in 1994. So, as the land popularly known locally as Mzansi heads to the polls, we are joined by Keanen Isaacs, a master's student at Witwatersrand University in Gauteng, who is also a researcher at the South African History Online publication. This series will look at three aspects of South Africa and its election. First of all, we'll look at the presidents from Mandela to Ramaphosa. Secondly, we'll look at South African foreign policy, either as a global South champion or an African hegemon. And then lastly, we'll look at South Africa's election explained, which will look at the who's who and the what's at stake.
I know that none dare challenge me when I say I am an African.
Welcome to our podcast, Keanen Isaacs. We're very happy to have you on in this very controversial, tight, whichever description you need to describe this election.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Okay, so we can start with the presidents. How did each president of South Africa contribute to shaping South Africa's democracy during their 10 years? What are they most known for, and what are perhaps their biggest challenges?
President, the late President Nelson Mandela, being the country's first black president, basically had the humongous task of trying to heal a nation divided on class and racial lines, following hundreds of years of colonial rule and then apartheid. President Mandela himself, known as regarded by many as an international statesman. I think during the tenure of Thabo Mbeki, whose administration promoted the idea of African Renaissance, which is basically emphasizing the idea of finding African solutions to African problems. I think one of the major challenges during his tenure was the handling of the HIV and AIDS pandemic with the health minister, and also the increase in xenophobic attacks in the country during 2007 and 2008. When we look at the administration of President Zuma, basically it is one characterized by allegations of corruption, state capture. The state capture, I'm sure you would know, has caught international media headlines. And basically his presidency is one in which South African institutions were eroded as a result of corruption, financial malfeasance, and poor governance. Key role in mediations in the United Kingdom as well. When Cyril Ramaphosa was elected as president of the African National Congress and then assuming the presidency. During his tenure, many of the state institutions which were eroded during the Zuma era, such as the National Prosecuting Authority and state institutions like the South African Revenue Service, were restructured, and some credibility has been brought back to those institutions, which are also a central part of the state and any democracy.
And that's sorry, continue.
Also, the Ramaphosa administration hasn't been free of its own problems. Ramaphosa himself has been accused of tax evasion due to his the the scandal on his farm, in which
Yeah.
he Fala farm saga, yes, which is we call Fala Gate or Ramaphosa Gate in South Africa.
Okay.
In As a nod to the Watergate saga in the United States.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just basically but also I think it's important to recognize that each of these presidents served during different periods in the country's history as well. So if you look at President Nelson Mandela, um, basically being the transition from apartheid to democracy, and
Mhm.
then Thabo Mbeki
Mhm.
basically uh, fostering and furthering the country's economic policies and its economic outlook.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
during the Zuma era, South Africa engaging obviously with more partners, like strengthening ties with China, and then obviously notably joining
Mhm.
the BRICS bloc. And then we have Cyril Ramaphosa, who's leading who leads the ANC during a time of when the party is basically in decline.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, um, I'm very interested in um, also looking at perhaps if we can delve into them individually. Nelson Mandela at that time, was a sort of, as you said, transitional figure. But there's also the narrative around Mandela's presidency is quite lackluster. Like not many people are able to talk about the things aside from the feel. Not many people are able to talk about the things that Nelson Mandela did as president. They know the 27 years in prison story. Um, they know the freedom fighter struggle. They know the sort of forgiveness story. But my question is sort of regarding Mandela. I wanted to delve into the Nelson Mandela presidency because there seems to be very little information. I don't know if South Africans themselves know more about Mandela's presidency itself, but generally we know the story, Long Walk to Freedom, 27 years, reconciliation and transition and so on. But what tangible things did Mandela actually do as president? And can it be remembered as the glory days? If yes, um, why is it that we have a lot of young South Africans who are discussing this sort of failure of Nelson Mandela? And some are even going to the extent of saying Mandela was a sellout to,
yeah,
to sort of business interests that were predominantly white. So what is this sort of backlash of Nelson Mandela, if there is one? And then what
yeah.
actually did President Mandela do as president?
I think this is it's a good question. I think it's something that we need as a democracy, and as we head into the elections this coming week. I think uh, Mandela as a president, the undertook um, initiatives, like one of the initiatives that he promoted and advocated for was children's rights. Mandela cared a lot about children, and there are a number of quotes which speak to that. I think one of the
Mm,
quotes he said is that you can tell a lot about the society by the way it treats its women and children. And
mm,
the the feeling uh, of frustration from since 1994 is more of uh, I think there's a misconception about democracy uh, and actually what happens on the ideals of democracy and what actually needs to take place to ensure a democratic society functions. So I think not 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 enough or not many South African youth could appreciate the position Nelson Mandela found himself
Mhm.
in, in during the 90s, and because that's not a it's not an easy thing to tell people, like, after 200 years of colonialism, 40 years of apartheid, what we need to reconcile, we need to live together, black, white, uh,
Mhm.
black and white
Very
South
good.
Africans, and then work, work the Rainbow Nation, yeah, and then work together towards building a non-racist, free and equal society for all. I think the many have also criticized the concept of the Rainbow Nation. If we
Mhm.
look at the Rainbow Nation, there are no gaps in between the colors. However, South African society is considered one of the most unequal in the world, and this is not just in income equality, it's inequality across the board, gender inequality, racial inequality, economic inequality, and these are some of the things that when the ANC came into power in 1994, it came into power with a promise to fight the three P's, although not the three P's, but three major uh, three major factors, which was poverty, unemployment, and inequality.
Okay.
I think what sets Mandela apart from many other African leaders is that he was already old and didn't foresee himself governing for a long time. So
Mhm.
it was always his intent to only serve one presidential term and then
Mm.
step down.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from Mandela's leadership, but I think we are too quick to bash Mandela and say, he's been a sellout. And I think he
Yeah.
did what was best for the country at that time.
Mm. So you'd say it's like a tight balance and sort of the history demanding that for the sort of security of the future of South Africa. Um, but
Yes.
so Mandela was 77 when he became president. As you said, Mandela stepped down, he was old. Had Mandela been president in the 1960s, along with most of his peers, like Nyerere, Kaunda, Samora Machel, Samora Machel was the 70s, but around that time, had Mandela been president of South Africa in the 1960s, would we have seen a different Nelson Mandela rather than the Mandela of 1994?
That would that would be difficult to say because during the 1960s, there was, I think, the anti-apartheid movement was basically just kicking off.
Mm,
Um, and then obviously during from the 70s to the 80s was the campaign of national defiance, mass stayaways, and um, mass popular mobilization by liberation movements such as the ANC and the United Democratic Movement
mhm,
and others. I think also one of the issues of or the legacy of of figures like Mandela is that, they were in the upper echelons of the movement, in the leadership. However, many of the the liberation fighters, like those in Mkonto Sizwe, and those the MK saboteurs who went to train in other parts of Africa and Russia, many of their accomplishments and what they have done for the struggle has fallen by the wayside,
Mm.
and where it's the party leaders are given the credit, such as Mandela.
Mhm.
But they were ordinary uh, black South Africans, black, white, colored, Indian, who also did things to advance the struggle for human rights and democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I guess there's always that story for a founding father where they say, oh, had it been this other leader, maybe would have had a different trajectory. Had it been this one, in many countries, I think you see that a lot. Um, some people say if Chris Hani was president, if Oliver Tambo, who was the president of the ANC during the time of Mandela's incarceration. There's always these eventualities. Anyway, moving
Yeah.
to just to Thabo Mbeki, there is a fact that I've seen from Afrobarometer that during Thabo Mbeki's time, there was, of course, there's the HIV issue that he
Yes.
was very controversial about. But there was also, him securing the World Cup, and then also this phenomenon of the black middle class in South Africa. And Afrobarometer says that the black middle class grew quite rapidly during that time. So can you just tell us a bit about what is this so-called black middle class? Is it there? Is it a joke? And can we say that this is Thabo Mbeki's achievement or ANC's achievement, or is it not related to?
I don't think any one person can claim the growth of a black middle class as one of the achievements. I think it's the emergence of a black middle class is a result of the policies that have been undertaken by the African National Congress in the post-apartheid era and post 1994.
Mhm.
Whether the whether a black middle class actually exists, that's something that is debated by South African economists. We also have this this category of missing middle, which
Missing.
is yeah, missing middle in South Africa, which is basically so if in order for you to access certain government funding, for instance, you want to get a bursary, your family needs to earn a certain amount of money in order for you to qualify. So
Okay.
basically, missing middle was a category that wasn't there. It didn't exist for basically people who work for the state. So they earn. So basically, they earn too much money in order to
Mhm.
access those grants or bursaries, and then earn too little too little to actually ensure that they can keep up with the payments while making sure that there's food to eat and they have money to get to work.
I see.
Also, I'm sure I'm not sure if you know this, but uh, data shows that South Africans spend the majority of their money on food and transport.
I see.
Um, yeah, so also I don't think one thing about the 2010 Soccer World Cup is that it was the there was a massive infrastructure drive with the building of stadiums and roads and transport systems. But uh, years later, we learned that South Africa didn't win that, but even fair and square. We bribed someone at FIFA in order for us to be able to host
Wow.
the 2010 Soccer World Cup. And that just shows also how entrenched corruption is in the South African government. And
Yeah.
this has also influenced because South Africa wanted to host the Olympic Games not too long ago, but
Okay.
this the 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 fraud of the 2010 Soccer World Cup still hangs
Mm.
over the country's sporting bodies.
Yeah, I mean, the 2010 World Cup was wild. Like everyone was talking about it. For those of us who were in Southern Africa, like myself in Zambia, you could feel the World Cup fever.
Yeah,
Everyone was
we
talking about
called
it.
it the Gees.
Sorry?
We called it the Gees.
The fierce.
The Gees. So
Why?
Gees. It's a
Oh,
Afrikaans saying for spirit.
okay, okay. Yeah, no, it was, you could definitely feel it. You could definitely feel it. It was a very
Yeah,
good moment.
the Gees.
Yeah, for I wouldn't say just South Africa, the region and Africa as a whole. So it's quite damning that it was, and you had the good old man Madiba as one of the bidders, and yet it wasn't fair and square. Anyway, you talked about
Yes,
corruption. That's a nice sort of segue because through Thabo Mbeki, I mean, even in Mandela's presidency, there was the arms scandal. Thabo Mbeki, I think I don't know which corruption scandal was big then. But Zuma was, very well known for corruption and state capture.
yes.
Um, so what is this narrative? In the Zuma narrative, I see people bouncing between sort of his supporters say, oh no, it's the white. There's this term that was very famous, the white monopoly capital. And it was being weaponized everywhere or on any type of
Yes,
new platform. And his supporters were basically saying we are under attack by the white monopoly capital. And then on those who were opposing him, they were
yeah,
saying it has been captured and so on and so forth. And they were protests. South Africans are known for your protests, but that time was almost every week,
yes,
like France almost, where there was anarchy
yes,
almost every single week. Fees must fall, roads must fall. Um, and your parliament was actually very interesting. Okay, not for a good reason, but it was very interesting at that time. It became very famous. Um,
yes,
and you have the rise of the EFF at that time, but you also have
yes,
and I'm sort of obsessed with this sort of black middle class demographic, but we can discuss it later. But so you have the rise of you have this endemic levels of corruption. So if you can just explain to us these two narratives around Jacob Zuma, he's still quite a popular figure. And at that
yes,
time in his
he is.
presidency, who was sort of on this white monopoly? Who is this so-called white monopoly? And are they doing what they are saying they are doing? Um, it's almost like the deep state, the way Donald Trump talks about the deep state. And
Yes. I was going to make a
yeah,
reference to the
yeah, and
similarities. Yes,
yeah, and then you also have the state capture. So yeah, just give us a bit of what do you have to say about that?
yes. There could be some truth to the allegations of white monopoly capital that that the major corporations and industries in South Africa are all headed by white people. The fact that um 70% of farming land in South Africa 30 years into democracy is still owned by a handful of whites. with whites being the minority in the country. So about 15% of the population holds 70 to 80% of the country's arable land. And
Mm,
obviously this is why South Africa is considered as one of the most unequal societies in the world.
mhm,
Uh, On the other hand, the idea of white monopoly capital could also be a scapegoat used by the ANC to distract the population from its own failures of
mm,
bettering the lives of all South Africans, black, white, colored, and Indian.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
there are two sides, like they say, there are two sides to the coin.
yeah. No, that's a good sort of explanation to sort of the potential hypocrisy there. Yeah, no, I think that's everything when it comes to the presidents. Ramaphosa seems like quite, I don't know, every time I see Ramaphosa, I always kind of feel sorry for the guy because he's always, he always looks rather stressed. And, you had the COVID pandemic, you
Yeah,
had the 2021, and we also did an episode on that when it happened actually. 2021, I think that was 2021, mid 2021, the sort of chaos after Jacob Zuma's election.
yes,
Uh,
arrest, yes.
yeah. So do you think people have trust Ramaphosa more than Zuma? Like, is he genuinely a fresh start? I remember there was Ramaphoria when he became president, but like it seems to have all like watered down now. Is Ramaphosa
Yeah.
really this,
So I
yeah, go ahead.
the South African media also plays a major role in how presidents are perceived. So with Zuma, but before Zuma even became president, he was in and out of court for rape and sexual assault allegations, and there are many who say it's the ANC,
Wait, these
who
allegations
basically
were
just
targeted at
ignored
who?
at President Zuma.
Zuma. Okay, okay.
Yes. So this was before he even became president of the country. I mean, during his president during his presidency, one of the major scandals also is the arms deal. So
Yeah.
implicating himself and another official, Shabir Sheikh.
Shabir Sheikh, I've heard Trevor Noah making fun of that name, though I'd never
Yes,
looked
yes,
into it. Yeah. So many of these things that he was arrested for were actually predating like several years ago. So as Cyril Ramaphosa heads to the polls for his second term, Cyril Ramaphosa is also aging. He's in his 70s, I think. If
yes.
not, yeah,
Late 60s.
yeah. The ANC, all these presidents have all got these sort of liberation credentials. If the ANC now, 30 years into democracy, is there any young person that the ANC is planning on grooming to take over? Because it seems like it's a sort of veterans club of older people, older ANC members with these liberation credentials.
Yes. I doubt that there's any prominent young person in the
Mm,
ANC besides the Justice and Correctional Minister Ronald Lamola. He's probably one of the youngest members of President Cyril President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet.
mm,
I think the problem that you mentioned is not just the problem in South African politics, but in African politics at large. That I think as the youth of South Africa, sometimes it's frustrating to see that, to know that our leaders are far older
Mhm.
than the majority of the population. However, not many youth are in positions of leadership and in positions to make decisions. So so 60% of South Africa, of the South African population, is between the ages of 15 to 35, which is considered youth in South Africa,
Mm.
which means that 60% of the people of the people in the National Assembly should be people between the ages of 18 and 35. Obviously, in South Africa, you need to be 18 in order to be able to run for public office.
So yeah, I think we can close that. That's been the section on the presidents. We've gone through each and every president and looked at sort of their pitfalls and their successes and what people sort of expect of 30 years of ANC leaders, from Mandela to Ramaphosa.
I am an African.